Everyone thought it was just another case of an entitled passenger refusing to move. They saw a black man in a hoodie sitting in first class, and they assumed the worst. The flight attendant sneered. The wealthy woman screamed. And the airport security guards? They saw a target. They dragged him down the aisle, ignoring his calm warnings, ignoring the law, and ignoring basic human decency. But what none of them knew, what would cost them their careers, their reputations, and millions of dollars in lawsuits, was that the man they were assaulting wasn't a trespasser. He was Special Agent Dante Sterling, the head of the FBI's counter-terrorism unit. And the moment those handcuffs clicked, the trap was sprung. This is the story of the flight that never should have taken off. Location: Chicago O'Hare International Airport, ORD. Gate K12 time, 19:45 p.m. Flight, Aeroglobal 882 to Washington Dulles. The rain hammered against the reinforced glass of Terminal 3 at O'Hare. A rhythmic drumming that usually soothed Dante Sterling. Tonight, however, it just felt like static. Dante rubbed his temples, his fingers brushing against the scar just above his left eyebrow, a souvenir from a raid in Detroit 3 years ago. He was exhausted. Not the kind of tired you get from a long day at the office, but the bone-deep weariness that comes from 3 weeks of undercover surveillance on a human trafficking ring. He hadn't slept in a real bed in 72 hours. All he wanted was to get back to D.C., debrief with the director, and sleep for a week. He looked down at his boarding pass. Seat 1A, first class. The Bureau didn't usually spring for first class, but given the success of the operation, and the fact that it was the last seat on the last flight out of Chicago, his handler, Assistant Director Miller, had pulled strings. Dante wasn't dressed like a Fed. He was wearing a charcoal grey hoodie, dark denim jeans, and Timberland boots. He looked like a civilian. He looked like a guy from the South Side. He specifically didn't look like the senior special agent in charge, SSAC, of a federal task force. His badge and his service weapon, a Glock 19 Gen 5, were secured. He had already cleared the armed law enforcement protocols with TSA. The gate agents knew he was armed. The pilot had the manifest. But the flight crew? They hadn't looked at the manifest yet. Dante boarded early, slinging his duffel bag into the overhead bin. He collapsed into seat 1A, put in his noise-cancelling earbuds, and closed his eyes. He just needed peace. He didn't get it. "Excuse me? I think you're confused." The voice was shrill, piercing through his earbuds. Dante opened one eye. Standing in the aisle was a woman who looked like she cost more than Dante made in a decade. She was draped in a beige Burberry trench coat, clutching a Louis Vuitton carrier that yipped. Her blonde hair was sprayed into an immovable helmet of perfection. This was Beatrice C. Kensington. Her husband was a real estate mogul in Virginia, and Beatrice had never heard the word no in her 55 years of life. Dante pulled one earbud out. "Ma'am, you are in my seat," Beatrice said, pointing a manicured finger at him. She didn't look at his face. She looked at his hoodie. Her nose wrinkled as if she smelled something foul. Dante checked his ticket again, just to be sure. 1A. "This is my seat, ma'am. Maybe you're in 1B? "I do not sit in aisle seats," Beatrice snapped, her voice rising. Passengers boarding behind her were beginning to bottleneck. "I specifically requested the window, and I certainly didn't pay $2,000 to sit next to someone like you." The air in the cabin shifted. It got colder. Dante sat up straighter. He'd dealt with cartel sicarios and armed bank robbers. A Karen in a trench coat didn't scare him, but she exhausted him. "Ma'am, I have a ticket. Please check yours." "I don't need to check anything," she yelled. "Steward! Steward!" Coming down the aisle was Chad Thorne. Chad was the lead flight attendant, a man who wore his uniform a little too tight, and his authority a little too loosely. He had a fake tan and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He saw Beatrice, wealthy, white, distressed, and then he saw Dante, black, hoodie, tired. Chad didn't need to ask questions. In his mind, the equation was solved. "Is there a problem here, Mrs. Kensington?" Chad asked, his voice dripping with customer service syrup. "This individual," Beatrice hissed, gesturing at Dante as if he were a stain on the upholstery, "is in my seat, and he refuses to move. I feel threatened. Threatened." The magic word. Dante sighed. "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm sitting in the seat I paid for. Here is my boarding pass." Dante held out the paper ticket. Chad didn't take it. He didn't even look at it. He looked Dante in the eye, his chin raised in arrogant defiance. "Sir," Chad said, his voice dropping an octave to sound authoritative, "I need you to grab your bag and step off the plane." "Excuse me?" Dante asked, his calm demeanor slipping just a fraction. "I just offered to show you my ticket." "We don't need to see the ticket, sir," Chad said, loud enough for the economy passengers to hear. "We know when a seat has been poached. You're disrupting the boarding process. You're upsetting our priority passengers. Grab your bag, now." "I'm not poaching a seat," Dante said, his voice hardening. "And I suggest you check the flight manifest before you escalate this." "Are you threatening me?" Chad gasped, clutching his chest theatrically. "Did you hear that, Mrs. Kensington? He threatened me." "I heard it," Beatrice cried. "He's violent. Get him off." Dante looked around. People were filming. Phones were raised like little black monoliths. "Good. Let them film." "I am asking you one last time," Dante said, locking eyes with Chad. "Check the manifest." "I'm calling security," Chad announced, turning on his heel. "You had your chance." Location: Aeroglobal Flight A382, time 20:05 p.m. The tension in the first-class cabin was thick enough to choke on. Beatrice Kensington had taken seat 1B, but she refused to sit. She stood in the aisle, clutching her yapping dog, glaring at Dante. "You're going to jail," she muttered. "My husband plays golf with the senator. You're going to be buried under the jail." Dante ignored her. He took out his phone and sent a quick text to Assistant Director Miller. "Situation at ORD. Gate K12. Local PD involved soon. Stand by." He put the phone away. He knew he could flash the badge right now. He could pull out his credentials, announce he was federal law enforcement, and end this. But Dante Sterling was a man of principle. He wanted to see how far they would go. He wanted to see if the system was as broken as he feared. If he showed the badge now, they would apologize only because of his power, not because they realized their mistake. He needed them to commit. 3 minutes later, the heavy tread of boots echoed on the jet bridge. 2 men entered. Officer Gary Brock and Officer Timothy Higgins of the airport's private security contractor. They weren't real police. They were rent-a-cops with tasers and egos, contracted by the airline to handle disturbances. Officer Brock was a large man, necklace and red-faced, looking for a fight to validate his existence. Higgins was younger, nervous, following the Alpha's lead. "Where is he?" Brock demanded. Chad pointed a dramatic finger at seat 1A. "Right there. Refused to leave. Threatened me. Threatened the lady. We want him removed immediately." Brock marched up to Dante. "All right, buddy. Party's over. Up." Dante remained seated. He kept his hands visible, palms open on his knees. He knew the drill. Don't give them an excuse. "Officer," Dante said calmly, "I have paid for this seat. I have offered to show the flight attendant my boarding pass, and he refused to look at it. I am asking you, as a law enforcement officer, to look at my pass." "I ain't looking at crap," Brock spat. "The pilot wants you off. The airline wants you off. That means you're trespassing. You can walk or we can drag you. Your choice. You have no legal grounds to remove a ticketed passenger who has committed no crime, Dante stated, reciting the regulation. Under FAA regulation 14 CFR. Shut up with the lawyer, speak! Brock lunged forward, grabbing Dante's wrist. Mistake. Dante's reflexes kicked in. He didn't strike back, but he solidified his posture. Brock tried to yank him, but Dante was 220 pounds of solid muscle. He didn't budge. Sir, Dante said, his voice dropping to a command frequency, the tone he used when negotiating with hostage-takers. Take your hand off me. I am warning you once. If you escalate this, you will regret it. Resisting! Brock yelled. He's resisting. Higgins, get his legs! Chaos erupted. Higgins grabbed Dante's ankles. Brock went for a headlock. Beatrice Kensington cheered from the aisle. Get him! Get the thug out of here! From the economy section, a young woman named Sarah, a law student, stood up on her seat, filming everything in high definition. He didn't do anything, she screamed. He offered to show his ticket. Stop choking him. Dante was struggling now, not to fight them, but to keep from accidentally hurting them. He could snap Brock's wrist in 2 seconds. He could disarm him and secure the cabin in 10, but he couldn't. He had to endure. I can't breathe, Dante gritted out as Brock's forearm pressed against his windpipe. Then stop fighting, Chad the flight attendant yelled, leaning over the seat, looking delighted. Brock and Higgins managed to wrestle Dante out of the seat. They didn't let him walk. They dragged him. His expensive hoodie was tearing. His head bumped against the armrest of 2B. Get him off the plane, Beatrice shouted. They dragged him into the aisle. Dante's duffel bag was left behind. You are making a mistake, Dante gasped, his vision blurring slightly from the chokehold. My ID inside jacket pocket. I don't care about your ID, Brock roared. They hauled him toward the cabin door, right past the cockpit. And that's when the pilot, Captain Anderson, finally stepped out of the cockpit to see what the commotion was. He looked down. He saw the security guards manhandling a passenger. Then, the captain saw something else. As Brock yanked Dante's hoodie down to get a better grip, the fabric bunched up, revealing Dante's belt line. Attached to the belt was a leather holster. Inside the holster was the matte black grip of a government-issue Glock, and right next to it, clipped to the belt, was a gold shield. It wasn't a security guard badge. It wasn't a local cop badge. It was the eagle-topped, blue-enameled shield of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Captain Anderson's face went pale. He knew the codes. He had the manifest. He had seen the name D. Sterling, Federal LEO, armed on his paperwork, but he hadn't connected the dots until this second. Stop! The captain screamed, his voice cracking. Let him go! Now! Brock paused, sweating and panting. What? Cap, we got him. He's armed. He's got a gun. Brock reached for his own taser, thinking he had discovered a terrorist. Don't you touch that taser! The captain roared, practically diving forward to intervene. You idiot! Look at his belt! Brock looked down. Chad looked down. Beatrice, who had followed them to the front to watch the show, looked down. Dante shook himself free from Higgins's loosened grip. He stood up. He was battered, his hoodie was ripped, and he had a bruise forming on his cheek. But the exhaustion was gone, replaced by cold, hard steel. Dante slowly reached into his inner jacket pocket. Brock flinched. Dante didn't pull a gun. He pulled a leather wallet. He flipped it open. The credentials shone under the cabin lights. Special agent. Dante looked at Brock, then at Chad, then at Beatrice. I am Special Agent Dante Sterling, FBI Counter-Terrorism, he said. The silence in the plane was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. You have just assaulted a federal officer. You have impeded a federal investigation. And you, he pointed at Chad, You just violated federal aviation laws regarding the treatment of armed officers. Dante rolled his neck, a loud crack echoing in the silent cabin. Now, Dante whispered, and the sound was terrifying. Lock the doors. Nobody gets off this plane. Location, Aeroglobal Flight 882. Still at gate K12 time, 20:12 p.m. The atmosphere inside an airplane cabin is pressurized, but rarely like this. The air didn't just feel thin, it felt non-existent. The silence that followed Dante Sterling's whisper, "Lock the doors," was heavy, suffocating. Captain Anderson was the first to move, shaking off his paralysis. He realized that his aircraft, his domain, had just become ground zero for a federal incident of catastrophic proportions. "Flight deck," Anderson barked into his radio, his voice trembling slightly. "Do not push back. I repeat, do not push back. We have a security situation on board involving a federal agent. Keep the jet bridge attached. Nobody on, nobody off." Chadwick Thorne, the lead flight attendant, looked like he was experiencing a localized glitch in reality. His perfectly sprayed hair seemed to wilt. He stared at the gold badge clipped to Dante's belt as if it were a radioactive isotope. "Agent?" Chad stammered. His customer service veneer cracked and fell away, revealing pure, unadulterated panic underneath. "But you were in a hoodie. You didn't look like—" Dante took one slow step toward Chad. The flight attendant actually whimpered and took a step back, colliding with the bulkhead. "I didn't look like what, Chadwick?" Dante asked, his voice terrifyingly level. "I didn't look like someone deserving of basic respect? I didn't look like someone who knows the law better than you know the beverage cart?" Dante turned his attention to Officer Gary Brock. The large security guard was no longer red-faced with rage. He was grey with dread. His hand hovered near his empty taser holster, twitching. "You," Dante said, pointing a finger at Brock. "Put your hands on your head. Interlock your fingers. Now." "Now wait a minute," Brock tried to bluster. But the air had gone out of him. "I was just doing my job. The airline called us. They said you were trespassing. I didn't know you were a Fed. If you'd known, you wouldn't have choked me," Dante finished for him. "So, you only assault citizens when you think they don't have the power to fight back. Is that your operating procedure, Officer Brock?" He told me you threatened him." Brock pointed accusingly at Chad. The circular firing squad was beginning. "He said you were violent." "And you didn't verify," Dante said. "You didn't ask for ID. You went straight to physical violence against a passive subject. That's assault under color of authority. Hands on your head. Higgins, you too." Officer Higgins, the younger partner, complied instantly, looking like he was about to cry. Brock hesitated for a second, looking at the captain for support. Captain Anderson just glared at him. Brock slowly raised his massive arms and interlocked his fingers behind his head. Then there was Beatrice Kensington. She had stopped shouting about her husband's golf partners. She was staring at Dante, clutching her dog carrier so tightly her knuckles were white. In her world, money always won. Authority was something you bought, not something that wore denim and sat in seat 1A. Her brain couldn't process the reversal. "This is ridiculous," Beatrice sniffed, trying to regain her composure, though her voice quavered. "You may be some sort of policeman, but that doesn't give you the right to cause this scene. I have places to be. Captain, I demand you remove this man, and let us take off." Dante turned to her slowly. He didn't yell. He just looked at her with the eyes of a man who had interrogated hardened terrorists and broken them in hours. "Mrs. Kensington," Dante said, "you are currently detained as a material witness to a federal felony assault, and depending on what the video evidence shows, you may be charged as an accessory, given your vocal encouragement of the assault. I suggest you sit down, be quiet, And pray my neck isn't seriously injured." Beatrice's jaw dropped. "Detained? You can't detain me. I'm Beatrice Kensington." "I don't care if you're the Queen of England," Dante said. "Sit down." He pointed to seat 1B, the seat she had coveted. She looked at it, then looked at him, and crumbled. She sank into the seat, defeated by a force she couldn't write a check to make disappear. Dante pulled out his phone. He had 1 bar of service. He hit speed dial. "Director Miller," Dante said when the line connected. "Dante, you're supposed to be wheels up. What's going on?" "We have a situation at O'Hare. I've been assaulted by airline security and staff aboard Flight 882. I'm okay, but I've initiated a federal detainer on the aircraft. I need a protective detail and an investigative team from the Chicago field office to my location immediately." Code red. There was a brief silence on the other end, followed by the sharp intake of breath. "Assaulted? Are you serious?" "Who?" "Affirmative. 2 private security contractors, instigated by the lead flight attendant, abetted by a passenger. They didn't check credentials until after they choked me and dragged me 50 feet. Mother of God. All right, Dante. Hold the scene. I'm activating the Chicago Quick Response Team. SAG Patterson is 10 minutes out. Do not let anyone leave that plane. I'm alerting the FAA and the DOJ. They just stepped in a world of hurt." Dante hung up. He looked around the cabin. The first-class passengers were frozen. The economy passengers were craning their necks, phones still recording. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dante announced, his voice projecting clearly. "This aircraft is now under the jurisdiction of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Nobody is to leave their seats. We will have this sorted out shortly. I apologize for the delay, but some people on this flight needed a very hard lesson in federal law." He sat back down in seat 1A. His hoodie was ripped, his neck was throbbing, but he had never felt more in control. He looked across the aisle at Beatrice, who was weeping silently into her dog carrier. The wait for the cavalry began. It was the longest 10 minutes of Chad Thorne's life. Location: Aero Global Flight near Haiti. Time: 20:30 p.m. The arrival of the real FBI was nothing like the arrival of airport security. There was no bluster, no shouting, just efficient, terrifying precision. 4 dark SUVs tore across the tarmac, lights flashing, bypassing standard security protocols. They braked hard around the jet bridge of Gate K-12. A dozen agents in tactical gear swarmed up the stairs. The lead agent, special agent in charge, SAIC, Robert Patterson, a man with salt and pepper hair and a face carved from granite, strode onto the plane. He took one look at the scene. The security guards with hands on their heads, the weeping socialite, the pale flight crew, and Dante, sitting calmly in 1A with a ripped shirt. And his expression darkened. Patterson walked straight to Dante. They didn't shake hands. They exchanged a nod of professional solidarity that spoke volumes. "Status, Agent Sterling," Patterson said. "Subject 1, Chadwick Thorne, lead attendant, instigator, filed false verbal complaint leading to assault. Subject 2 and 3, Brock and Higgins, private security. Committed physical assault on a federal officer, battery, unlawful restraint. Subject 4, Beatrice Kensington. Disorderly conduct, interfering with a flight crew, potential incitement." Dante stood up, wincing slightly as his neck stiffness set in. "I want them separated. I want witness statements from everyone in the first 5 rows of economy, specifically a young woman named Sarah who has video of the entire incident. And I want the flight manifest and the cockpit voice recorder pulled." "Done," Patterson said. He turned to his team. "You heard the man. Get these 2 clowns," he pointed to Brock and Higgins, "into custody. Read them their rights. Get the woman off the plane and into a holding room. Pilot, co-pilot, and the flight attendant stay here. We're doing this live." As agents handcuffed Brock and Higgins, real steel cuffs this time, not zip ties, Brock started crying. "I have a pension. I'm 3 years from retirement." "You should have thought about that before you put your hands on a Fed," an agent muttered as he shoved Brock toward the door. Beatrice was led off, loudly demanding her lawyer and threatening to sue the entire US government. That left Chad. Dante gestured to seat 1B, directly across from him. "Sit down, Chadwick." Chad sat. He looked like a wax figure left out in the sun. Patterson stood in the aisle, arms crossed, watching. Dante leaned forward, his demeanor shifting from victim to inquisitor. "Let's start with the basics, Chad," Dante said quietly. "Why did you want me off this plane?" "Mrs. Kensington, she was upset," Chad whispered. "She's a Diamond Medallion member. We have to prioritize their comfort." "So her comfort trumps my ticket? Trumps federal law? I didn't know. I thought you were just some guy trying to steal a seat." Dante slapped the armrest, a sharp crack that made Chad jump. "Don't lie to me, Chad. Lying to a federal agent is a felony under 18 U.S. Code, Paragraph 1001. You're already facing charges that could put you away for 10 years. Do you want to add 5 more? Chad started hyperventilating. I offered to show you my boarding pass, Dante said relentlessly. 3 times. Why didn't you look at it? Chad remained silent, tears streaming down his fake tan, creating muddy rivulets. I'll tell you why, Dante continued. Because you looked at me, and you looked at her, and you made a choice based on bias. You decided I didn't belong here, and then, to justify your bias, you lied. You told those security guards I threatened you. Did I threaten you, Chad? No, Chad whispered. Louder for the agents in the back, Dante said. No, you didn't threaten me. I made it up because I wanted them to get you off fast, before the captain noticed. I'm sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Dante leaned back, disgusted. You falsified a security threat on a commercial airliner to expedite the removal of a paying customer because a rich woman didn't like my hoodie. Do you realize the level of federal stupidity that requires? Sec Patterson stepped forward. Agent Sterling, we have the video from the witness, Sarah Jenkins. It confirms everything. The refusal to check the ticket, the false accusation of threats, the immediate physical escalation by security while Sterling was passive. Patterson looked down at Chad with utter contempt. Mr. Thorne, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault on a federal officer, interfere with flight crew operations, and providing false statements regarding national security transportation. Get him out of here. 2 agents hauled a sobbing Chad out of his seat. As he was dragged down the aisle, he passed the economy section. The passengers, who had been held for 30 minutes, didn't jeer. They just watched him with cold judgment. Sarah, the law student, held up her phone, still recording his walk of shame. Dante stood up and walked to the cockpit. Captain Anderson was sitting in the pilot seat, looking nauseous. Captain, Dante said. Agent Sterling, Anderson said, swallowing hard. I am profoundly sorry. I had no idea my crew was capable of this. I saw the Federal LEO designation on the manifest, but by the time I came out... You stopped it from getting worse, Captain. That will be noted in my report, Dante said. But your airline has a culture problem, a big one, and I'm going to make sure the entire world sees it. Dante turned to Patterson. Robert, I need to get to DC. I have a debrief in the morning that's more important than these idiots. We'll handle the cleanup here, Dante. We're impounding the plane for evidence processing anyway. Aeroglobal is going to have to find another bird for these people. Patterson clapped Dante gently on the shoulder, avoiding the bruised neck. Go get checked out by the medics, then we'll get you on a bureau jet to Dulles. You look like hell. Dante managed a weak smile. You should see the other guys' careers. As Dante walked off the plane, down the jet bridge he had almost been dragged down, he saw a suit-clad man sprinting toward the gate, sweating profusely. It was the Aero Global O'Hare station manager. The manager saw the FBI jackets, the sobbing flight attendant in cuffs, and Dante's grim face. The manager looked like he was about to have a heart attack. The Karma train was just pulling out of the station, and it was going to be a long, painful ride for Aero Global. Location: Chicago O'Hare Terminal 3. The internet time, 21:15 p.m. Same night, while Dante Sterling was being escorted to a private bureau jet on the tarmac, a digital bomb was being assembled inside Terminal 3. Sarah Jenkins, the 24-year-old law student from Georgetown, sat near a charging station at gate K14. Her flight had been cancelled due to the security incident, but she didn't care. Her hands were trembling as she held her iPhone 15 Pro. She had recorded everything. The video was 7 minutes long. It was shaky at first, but stabilized quickly. The audio was crystal clear. It captured Beatrice Kensington's screeching entitlement. It captured Chad Thorne's sneering arrogance. It captured the sickening sound of Dante being choked. And most importantly, it captured the climax, the badge, the silence, and the realization that the bullies had just assaulted a federal agent. Sarah opened TikTok. Her thumb hovered over the post button. She knew this would blow up. She didn't know it would change the world. She typed the caption: Aero Global staff and Karen assault a passenger for stealing a seat. Turns out he's a senior FBI agent. Watch until the end. Justice Aero Global FBI Karma. She hit post. Then she posted it to X, Twitter, then Instagram Reels. By the time Dante landed at Reagan National Airport in D.C. 90 minutes later, the video had 1.5 million views. Location: Aero Global Headquarters, Dallas, Texas. Time: 23:45 p.m. Richard Vance, the CEO of Aero Global, was asleep in his mansion when his phone rang. It was the God phone, the line reserved for crashes and hijackings. He fumbled for it, his heart hammering. Vance! Sir, it's distinct, came the voice of Elena Rostova, the VP of Public Relations. She sounded like she was hyperventilating. You need to wake up. Now! We are trending #1 worldwide, and it's catastrophic. Did a plane go down? Vance sat up, rubbing his face. Worse, Richard. From a PR perspective, it's worse. Staff on Flight 882 assaulted a black passenger in first class. They choked him and dragged him. Okay. Vance sighed, his mind already calculating settlements. Bad. We'll issue an apology, fire the contractors, pay the guy off. Standard procedure. Why wake me up? Richard, Elena said, her voice dropping. The passenger was Special Agent Dante Sterling, head of counterterrorism. And the video, Richard, the video shows our flight attendant lying about him. It shows a wealthy white woman instigating it. And it shows our security guards choking a Fed who was completely passive. Vance went cold. A Fed? Yes, and the internet has doxed everyone. They know Chad Thorne's name. They know Beatrice Kensington's name. They know the security firm. The hashtag #LaShojo Boycott Aero Global has 500,000 tweets in an hour. The stock is already down 4% in after-hours trading. Vance scrambled out of bed. Draft a statement. Standard denial of liability until we investigate. We can't, Elena screamed, losing her professional cool. The video is 4K, Richard. There is no spinning this. He showed them the badge and they still had him in a headlock. If we deny this, we look like monsters. The FBI just issued a press release confirming Agent Sterling was assaulted in the line of duty while traveling. They used the word assaulted, Richard. Not involved in an incident. The DOJ is involved. Vance walked to his window, looking out at the Dallas skyline. He realized, with a sinking feeling, that his quarterly bonus was gone. Fire them, Vance said. Fire Chad. Fire the security firm. Ban the woman for life. Put out a statement saying we are horrified. And get the legal team. I want the best lawyers money can buy. Because this Agent Sterling, he's going to come for blood. Location: Sterling Residence, Alexandria, Virginia. 1:30 a.m. Dante walked through his front door. He had been checked by bureau medics. Bruised larynx, sprained wrist, mild concussion. His wife, Maya, was waiting in the living room. The TV was on. CNN was playing the video on a loop. "Dante," she whispered, rushing to him. She didn't hug him. She looked at his neck. The purple bruising from Brock's forearm was already darkening against his skin. "I'm okay, May," Dante rasped. His voice was rough. "They choked you," she said, tears welling in her eyes. She pointed at the TV. "I watched them choke you. Millions of people are watching them choke you." On the screen, Anderson Cooper was interviewing a legal analyst. The banner read, "FBI agent assaulted on flight 882. "This is a clear-cut case of racial profiling meeting incompetence," the analyst was saying. "Agent Sterling showed remarkable restraint. If he had drawn his weapon, he would have been justified. But he didn't. He let them dig their own graves." Dante sat down heavily on the sofa. "It's better this way. If I had fought back, they would have said I was the aggressor. They would have said the angry black man attacked the poor security guards. I had to take the hit, May. I had to let them show the world who they really are." Maya gently touched his cheek. "You're a hero, Dante. But I hate that you had to be." "I'm not a hero," Dante said, his eyes hardening as he looked at the image of Chad Thorne on the screen. "I'm a witness, and tomorrow I stop being a victim. Tomorrow I become the prosecutor." His phone buzzed. It was a text from a number he didn't recognize, but the signature made him sit up straight. "Agent Sterling, this is Benjamin Crump's office. We saw the video. If you need representation for the civil suit, call us. But honestly, you don't need us. You have the truth. Give them hell." Dante smiled for the first time that night. Location: United States District Court, Northern District of Illinois. Time: 3 months later. The wheels of justice usually turn slowly, but when the FBI is the victim, the wheels are greased with rocket fuel. The criminal charges had been swift. Chadwick Thorne had been charged with interference with flight crew members and attendants, 49 U.S.C. paragraph 46504, and making false statements to federal agents. Because he had lied about Dante threatening him, a lie that triggered the assault, he was facing serious time. He had taken a plea deal almost immediately, sobbing in court, agreeing to testify against the others in exchange for a reduced sentence of 24 months in federal prison. His career in aviation was incinerated. Officers Brock and Higgins were not so lucky. They were charged with assaulting a federal officer, 18 U.S.C. paragraph 111, and deprivation of rights under color of law. Brock, the one who applied the chokehold, was looking at 10 years. Higgins, who held Dante's legs, was looking at 5. There, "I was just following orders" defense had crumbled when the video showed Dante clearly stating he had a ticket and offering to show it. But the real drama, the drama the public was hungry for, was the fate of Beatrice Kensington. She had been charged with disorderly conduct and aiding and abetting an assault. Her high-priced lawyers had managed to keep her out of jail on bail, but her life had collapsed. Dante sat in the front row of the courtroom for the sentencing hearing of Beatrice Kensington. He wore his best suit, a navy blue bespoke cut that made him look every inch the powerful government official he was. He didn't look at Beatrice. Beatrice looked like a ghost. The Karen haircut was gone, replaced by a messy bun. She looked 10 years older. Her husband, Arthur Kensington, the real estate mogul, was notably absent. Rumor was Arthur had filed for divorce 3 days after the video went viral. His business partners had threatened to walk if he stayed married to the plain lady. He had cut her off. Karma had come for her bank account first. The judge, Honourable Sarah P. Wallace, looked down at Beatrice over her spectacles. "Mrs. Kensington," the judge said, "you initiated this entire event. Your entitlement, your refusal to sit in the seat you were assigned, and your vocal demands to have a man removed simply because you didn't like the way he looked, these actions caused a federal agent to be strangled. You are a danger to the social order." "I didn't touch him," Beatrice wept. "I just wanted my seat." "You incited violence," the judge snapped. "I am sentencing you to 12 months of house arrest, 500 hours of community service to be served in the inner city of Chicago, and a fine of $250,000. Furthermore, you are placed on the federal no-fly list. You will never step foot on an airplane in the United States again." Beatrice gasped. For a woman who vacationed in Aspen and Paris, being grounded for life was a fate worse than prison. She slumped onto the table, wailing. Dante stood up and walked out. He didn't need to see her cry. He had one more battle to fight. The biggest one. Location: Conference Room B, Hale and Dorr Law Firm, Chicago time, 14:00 p.m. The civil deposition against Aero Global. Dante sat at the head of a long mahogany table. Flanking him were 2 DOJ attorneys and his private counsel. On the other side sat Richard Vance, the CEO of Aero Global, and an army of 5 corporate lawyers. They looked tired. The stock price had dropped 18% in 3 months. Advertisers had pulled out. The hashtag Aero Global Racists was still appearing in comments every time they posted. Agent Sterling, the lead corporate lawyer, a slick man named Mr. Sterling, no relation, began. "We are prepared to offer a settlement to make this go away. We acknowledge that our staff failed. We are prepared to offer you $2 million, provided you sign a non-disclosure agreement and release a statement saying, 'Aero Global has made amends.'" Dante laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. He slid a folder across the table. "I don't think you understand," Dante said. "I don't want your money. I mean, I'll take it, but that's not what this meeting is about." "Then what is it about?" Vance asked, his voice tight. "It's about policy," Dante said. "I've drafted a new training protocol for your airline. It's called the Sterling Protocol. It mandates that no passenger can be removed by physical force for a non-violent dispute without the intervention of actual police, not private security. It mandates triple compensation for involuntary bumping. And it mandates explicit bias training for every single employee you have, from the CEO down to the baggage handlers." Dante leaned forward. "You will adopt this protocol. You will name it after me. So every time your employees read it, they remember the man they choked. You will publicly apologize, admitting full liability, with no NDA, and—" Dante paused for effect. "You will pay $5 million. Not to me, but to a scholarship fund for underprivileged law students, specifically named the Sarah Jenkins Legal Defense Fund, after the young woman who filmed your crimes." The lawyers whispered furiously to Vance. "That's unprecedented," the lawyer stuttered. "No NDA? We can't do that. The reputational damage, the damage is done," Dante said, standing up. "You have 2 choices. You sign this today, or we go to trial. And if we go to trial, I will subpoena every complaint ever filed against your airline. I will put every racist incident you've buried on the front page of the New York Times, and I will take the stand in full dress uniform and tell the jury how it felt to have the life squeezed out of me by your payroll." Dante buttoned his jacket. Do you want to roll those dice, Mr. Vance?" Vance looked at Dante. He saw the scar over Dante's eye. He saw the unyielding resolve of a man who hunted terrorists for a living. He realized he was outmatched. Vance picked up the pen. "We'll sign," Vance whispered. "Good choice," Dante said. "And one more thing." "What?" Vance asked, defeated. "My flight back to DC tonight," Dante said, a small smirk playing on his lips. "I'm flying Aeroglobal. Seat 1A. Make sure it's open." Location? Chicago O'Hare International Airport, ORD. Terminal 3 time, 18 p.m., the same day as the settlement. 3 months had passed since the night the rain sounded like static to Dante Sterling. Today the rain was falling again, a relentless grey curtain washing over the tarmac of O'Hare. But the frequency had changed. To Dante, standing at the curb of the departures drop-off, it no longer sounded like noise. It sounded like clarity. He shouldered his duffel bag, the same olive-drab tactical bag that had been kicked down the aisle during the assault. He adjusted his hoodie. It wasn't the ripped one, of course, but it was identical. Charcoal grey, unassuming, comfortable. He looked like a man from the South Side. He looked like a civilian. But as he pushed through the revolving doors into the terminal, the atmosphere shifted. 3 months ago, he had walked into a wall of indifference and hostility. Today, the air felt electrically charged. He approached the Aeroglobal check-in counters. The branding was the same, the uniforms were the same, but the posture of the staff had undergone a radical transformation. They weren't leaning on counters chatting. They were standing straight, eyes scanning the queue, hyper-aware. Dante stepped up to the priority access lane. A young agent named Julian was manning the desk. Julian looked tired, the kind of fatigue that comes from walking on eggshells for 90 days straight. "Good evening, sir," Julian said, his voice polite, practiced. "Checking in for—" "Dulles," Dante said quietly. "1 bag to carry on." He slid his ID across the counter. Julian picked it up. He glanced at the name. Then he froze. His eyes snapped up to Dante's face, widening as recognition hit him like a physical blow. Julian's hands actually trembled slightly as he typed the name into the terminal. A distinct, urgent chime echoed from the computer. A red banner flashed across Julian's screen, invisible to the other passengers but glaringly obvious to the staff. VVIP, Sterling Protocol, Handling Code, Gold, Do Not Escalate. Julian swallowed hard. "Agent Sterling, Mr. Sterling, sir." "Just Dante is fine, Julian," Dante said, his voice calm, anchoring the young man's panic. "Right, yes, of course," Julian stammered, his fingers flying across the keyboard with a newfound urgency. Everyone at the station knows you're flying today. The station manager wanted to come down personally, but we didn't want to cause a scene. I just want to say, on behalf of the team here, we are honored to have you back." It wasn't the robotic script of a corporation trying to avoid a lawsuit. There was genuine respect in Julian's eyes. The fear of the angry black man had been replaced by the reverence for the quiet professional. "I appreciate that," Dante said. "You are in seat 1A, sir," Julian continued, handing back the boarding pass with 2 hands, like he was presenting a samurai sword. "Your credentials have been pre-cleared with TSA and the flight deck. The captain has requested that you board at your leisure." "No rush." Dante took the pass. "Is the flight on time?" "For you, sir. It'll wait," Julian said, entirely serious. Dante walked toward security. As he moved through the terminal, he noticed the subtle shifts. The security guards, contractors from a different firm now, were not loitering. They were patrolling with purpose. When Dante passed a group of TSA agents, 2 of them stopped their conversation and gave him a sharp, respectful nod. He wasn't a celebrity. He hadn't gone on talk shows. But in the law enforcement community, and in the ecosystem of this airport, He was a legend. He was the man who didn't blink. He arrived at Gate K12, the scene of the crime. The memories tried to claw their way up. The shouting, the feeling of Brock's arm crushing his windpipe, the humiliation of being dragged. Dante paused, closing his eyes for a second, acknowledging the trauma, and then stepping over it. The gate agent picked up the microphone. The boarding area went silent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to AeroGlobal Flight 990 to Washington Dulles. We are beginning our boarding process. Today we would like to extend a special welcome to our active duty military and federal law enforcement partners. Specifically, the agent paused, looking directly at Dante. We are honored to welcome Special Agent Dante Sterling back on board. It started with a single clap, then another. Then a wave of applause rippled through the waiting area. A young couple stood up. An older man in a suit gave a thumbs up. Dante ducked his head, feeling the heat rise in his cheeks. He hated the spotlight, but he understood the necessity of the moment. This wasn't just for him. It was a signal to everyone watching that the hierarchy had been reset. He walked down the jet bridge, the applause fading behind him, replaced by the hum of the aircraft's auxiliary power. He stepped onto the plane. Elena, the new lead flight attendant, was waiting. She was older, with kind eyes, and a demeanor that radiated maternal warmth, a stark contrast to Chad Thorne's plastic sneer. "Agent Sterling," she said softly, "welcome home." "Thank you, Elena." He walked to seat 1A. He placed his bag in the overhead bin. No one challenged him. He sat down. The leather was cool. The legroom was ample. He looked across the aisle at seat 1B. It was empty. AeroGlobal had blocked the seat next to him, a silent gesture of apology and space. As the plane pushed back, Dante looked out the window. The rain was still falling, but the storm had broken. He leaned his head back, the vibration of the engines lulling him. For the first time in months, his neck didn't hurt. The universe demands balance. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Dante Sterling's reaction had been silence. And law, the universe's reaction to his tormentors, was loud and devastating. The fall of Chad Thorne. Federal prison is a harsh reality check for a man whose power was derived from a beverage cart and a false sense of superiority. Chadwick Thorne served 18 months of his 24-month sentence in a medium security facility in Indiana. Inside, his customer service smile didn't work. He was stripped of his uniform, his fake tan, and his dignity. He became inmate 8940. Upon his release, Chad found that the internet is written in ink. Every time he applied for a job, at a hotel, a restaurant, even a rental car counter, the hiring manager would Google his name. The first result was always the video. Him lying to a federal agent, his face twisted in spiteful glee. The last update on Chad placed him in a windowless distribution warehouse in rural Ohio, working the graveyard shift packing boxes. He works alone. He doesn't speak to customers. And every time he sees a black man in a hoodie walk by, Chad flinches, the ghost of his own prejudice haunting him. The ruin of Officer Gary Brock, the man who applied the chokehold, learned that just following orders is not a legal defense. He lost everything. His pension was seized to pay for his legal defense. His house was foreclosed upon while he sat in a cell. His wife, tired of his temper and the public shame, divorced him 6 months into his sentence. He now lives in a studio apartment above a garage, working under the table as a bouncer for a dive bar that doesn't care about background checks. He spends his nights staring at the bottom of a glass, wondering how 10 seconds of aggression cost him the remaining 30 years of his life. The exile of Beatrice Kensington. Perhaps the most satisfying turn of fate was reserved for Beatrice Kensington. She avoided prison. But she entered a different kind of cage. Following her sentencing, her husband, Arthur, executed a ruthless divorce. He cited the public disgrace clause in their prenuptial agreement, leaving Beatrice with a fraction of the fortune she had married into. But the money wasn't the biggest loss. The plain lady, as the tabloids called her, was placed on the federal no-fly list, permanently. 6 months after the incident, Beatrice needed to get from Chicago to Miami for her sister's wedding. She couldn't fly. She couldn't take a private jet, as the FAA ban extended to charter manifests. She was forced to take a Greyhound bus. Witnesses reported seeing Beatrice Kensington clutching her Louis Vuitton bag, weeping in a bus terminal in Atlanta during a 4-hour layover. She was recognized by a group of teenagers who filmed her. She screamed at them to stop, which only made it go viral again. She is now a social pariah, uninvited from the galas, blocked by her former friends, living a grounded, lonely life in a small condo, grounded forever by the weight of her own entitlement. The rise of Sarah Jenkins. The young woman who held the camera didn't just get a viral moment. She got a future. Using the scholarship from the Sarah Jenkins Legal Defense Fund, paid for by Aero Global, Sarah finished law school at the top of her class. She didn't go into corporate law. She didn't chase the money. She joined the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Her swearing-in ceremony was attended by her family, and in the back row, standing quietly against the wall, was Assistant Director Miller and Special Agent Dante Sterling. Afterward, Dante shook her hand. "You saved me," he told her. "No," she replied. "You showed me what to fight for." Sarah is currently leading a task force investigating racial profiling in interstate commerce. She is the hammer that Dante helped forge. The legacy of Aero Global. The airline survived, but it was forced to evolve. The Sterling Protocol is now industry standard. It mandates that no passenger can be physically removed for a non-violent dispute without sworn law enforcement officers present. It requires de-escalation training for all crew. Richard Vance, the CEO who tried to buy Dante's silence, was ousted by the board. The new leadership understands one thing clearly: treating people with dignity is cheaper than a $5 million settlement. The agent. And what of Dante Sterling? He didn't write a book. He didn't go on Good Morning America. He didn't monetize his trauma. He went back to the shadows. He returned to the work that actually mattered. He continued to track terror cells, dismantle trafficking rings, and protect the country that had, for a brief moment, turned its back on him. But the world had changed around him. A few months later, Dante was on a red-eye flight to London for a joint operation with MI6. He was in economy this time. Budget cuts were back. He was reading a file, his reading light cutting through the dark cabin. A flight attendant walked by. She didn't say a word. She simply placed a fresh cup of coffee on his tray table. Under the cup was a cocktail napkin. Dante picked it up. Written in blue ink were 2 simple words: "Thank you." Dante smiled, folded the napkin, and put it in his pocket, right next to his badge. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you handle a bully. Dante Sterling didn't use his fists. He used his patience, his rights, and the cold, hard letter of the law. He let them dig their own hole, and then he stood back and let gravity do the rest. It cost the airline $5 million. It cost a billionaire her freedom to travel, and it sent 2 thugs to prison. But the real victory wasn't the settlement check. It was the change, because of Agent Sterling, and because of brave witnesses like Sarah who refused to put their phones down. The system was forced to fix itself. This story is a reminder that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you really need to worry about. And sometimes the guy in the hoodie isn't a threat. He's the only thing standing between you and chaos. I want to know what you think. If you were in Dante's seat, would you have played it that cool, or would you have flashed the badge the second they touched you? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story of massive karma satisfied your soul, do me a favor. Smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and tells YouTube you want more stories like this. And if you're new here, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, fly smart, and always know you're right.